guys, it's Heidi. I'm sorry it's been a little bit since I've checked in here, but things have been a little bit busy and a little bit chaotic, kind of personally, and also as far as Guardians of Basileia is concerned. So today I wanted to take a little bit of time to check in with you guys, fill you in on some things, and give you one of my exciting announcements. So a few months ago, I made a post about doing our genetic testing on Charlie and Minnie and Dragos. They are kind of the future of my program here, and so especially Dragos. And so we were finishing kind of the first steps in making sure that their genetic testing was complete before moving on to getting their hips x-rayed and evaluated. So as far as genetics go, it can be a little bit tricky and a little bit complicated. Genetics isn't something that is super duper black and white. There are parts of genetics that are, and then there are parts that are kind of just data points. It's information, but it's not necessarily something to base an entire breeding program on, especially when you're dealing with more rare breeds. For example, Dragos is a very rare breed, especially here in America. Here, Dragos, come. The Caucasian Ovcharka's breed pool here in America is very, very limited because it's considered a rare breed here and there just aren't very many breeders breeding them. And so that is why you end up having a lot of people importing dogs from Europe, is because we just don't have enough of a genetic pool and enough diversity genetically to be able to kind of choose from within our own country from these dogs. So it makes genetics a little bit more tricky because we want to be careful about our pairings, but if we're too picky genetically, we can actually limit our pool to a degree where we end up having really inbred dogs, and that's a really bad thing too. And so there's a balance there. So all of that's to say, we ended up getting our genetic and bark results back from Minnie, Charlie, and Dragos. And so as a precursor to this, Lucy we've always known as a carrier for a condition called degenerative myelopathy. And this is a pretty serious health condition. It affects the myelin sheath around the nerve in the spine, and it doesn't usually present itself until senior years. Around 8 years old is when we start seeing signs of this disease, but it can be pretty impairing and pretty severe. It can cause hind end lameness in the dogs that it affects, and so it's something that I take really seriously. So Lucy is a carrier, which only means that she carries one copy of the DM gene. In order for a genetic condition to appear in the offspring, it has to have the animal would have to have 2 copies of that gene. Lucy is only a carrier, and so she has a 50% chance to pass on 1 copy to her offspring, which we've always known. So when we got Charlie and Minnie's test results back, we knew that they had a 50% chance of carrying degenerative myelopathy. Now, an interesting note is that DM is actually not a common gene to see in our breeds. So in livestock guardian breeds, it is actually a pretty uncommon occurrence. So we weren't really thinking a whole lot of it. It was interesting. It was like, okay, well, she carries it, good to know. But also we weren't really thinking that it would affect our breeding program much because it's not common for other dogs to have in our breed pool. So we got Charlie and Minnie's test results, and not surprisingly, Charlie is a carrier of DM and Minnie is not, so 50% there. That doesn't really affect things as much, but what ended up being an issue is Dragos. Dragos also, as uncommon as it is a carrier of DM, and so he carries 1 copy as well. So because of this, it makes both Lucy and Charlie unsuitable mates for Dragos, and that eliminates half of my females as it stands for my Grand Cormac project. And so immediately this caused a lot of anxiety because my whole program at this point, we've neutered Remington and he's no longer our sire because genetically we already have his daughters. And so it caused a lot of anxiety. At first we were like, okay, well, does that mean that we need to rethink Dragos and find him a new farm and bring in a new male Caucasian Ovcharka that we have genetically tested before we bring in and make sure that he's clear of that? But the thing is that Dragos's temperament so far, he was born in December and it's July, so he's almost 8 months old now, and his temperament so far for an 8-month-old male Caucasian Ovcharka who's coming into his puberty and all that good stuff is remarkably good. He is very balanced, he's very stable, he is more intense and spicy than my other dogs given his breed, but he has done great, phenomenal with new people, new places. He is not aggressive meeting people at our gate. He has been able to go to Tractor Supply and to the gas station and to my parents' house and meet any new people that we bring. We've had people from church come over, we've had delivery people, and he shows no aggression toward these people at all. Now, some of this will probably intensify as he really hits his maturity, and I do expect to see some more wariness and stuff like that, but you see Caucasian Ovcharkas at his age already being crazy intense about new people, and we're not seeing that in him. And so far his temperament is just stellar. We do have a couple of little training things that I need to work on with him, but overall I didn't think that risking the idea of having a new male Caucasian Ovcharka come in and not know what we were gonna get was a good gamble, because he's already stellar. And to be quite honest, I love that dog. He's awesome. I'm already super attached. I don't just see, you guys know this, I don't just see my dogs as tools. It is really hard. I understand that as part of a breeding program and a breed development, there are probably going to be dogs that I do have to let go. It was hard to send Audrey home later because we spent a lot of time with her. So I do understand that, but Dragos is special. He really is. He has that special something, and I see so much potential in him. And so my heart was a little broken at the thought of having to send him off, because he was only going to be able to be a solid breeding candidate with Minnie and then possibly Judy, but we don't know because she also has a 50-50 chance of being a DM carrier, and we're waiting for her genetic results still. So as with dog breeding and pretty much any breeding operation, time frames are quite a ways out, right? So we're not going to be breeding any of our pups until they're 2 years old and they've passed their health testing, and we've proven that their temperament and their workability is sound and solid, and they're exactly what we're looking for in our program. And so the fact that we only have one pairing right now really limits our program. And so my husband and I did some discussing, and because of kind of future plans with Dragos, where we hope to one day be able to have full Caucasian Ovcharkas down the road, we decided that we wanted to keep him because his personality and his temperament again have been so good so far, and we now know what genetics he carries, and so it makes it easier for us to plan in the future if we were to bring in a Caucasian Ovcharka female, you know, a couple years down the road. So I talked to one of my Grand Cormac friends who is also a breeder in the program, and she happened to have a litter of Sharplaninach. I hope I say that right. It's a funny word, but that is his breed. Sharplaninach pups, and she had one big male who she was wanting to just find the right fit for. It's harder to place those big males because you want somebody who's competent and experienced with livestock guardian dogs and who can handle, you know, a bigger guardian dog. And so I reached out to her, chatted with her, and she said, you know, this would be great because I've been really trying to figure out where I was going to place this guy. And so I asked her if she'd be willing to do an embark test for me before I committed to buying him, and that I would pay her for that. And so she went ahead and did that, and he came back clear of DM. So he is not a carrier of DM. So that is fantastic, and we decided to go ahead and purchase him from our fellow Grand Cormac breeder and bring him here. He's going to be living with Judy out in the goat pen with our goats, and so since we had Audrey before and we're just kind of replacing Audrey with him, it won't change our dynamics here a whole lot. Won't change the workload a whole lot. It will be pretty similar to what we were already doing with Audrey. It's definitely not what my plan was. I was not planning on any new dogs for any time. We brought Judy in after her home didn't work out for her, not planning on that either. And so it's a little bit stressful because this definitely wasn't what I was thinking was going to happen. But some really cool things about the Sharklanenak is that they're kind of like distant cousins to the Caucasian Ovcharka, and they carry a lot of the same features and characteristics, but they're a little bit more tempered down. And for the Grand Coromach program, that actually might not be a bad thing, especially with Charlie, who tends to be a more intense dog as she is already. So crossing her with Dragos was already kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, in my head, especially for the purposes of the Grand Coromach program. We want dogs that can be family friendly and that are wary of strangers but not aggressive. And I was already not sure if pairing a more aggressive or intense, I wouldn't call her aggressive, but a more intense female with Dragos, who is a spicy male, would have been the best choice. So God is good, and he kind of worked all of that out for us in our favor. And so tomorrow afternoon, our transporter should be bringing Samson to our farm. His name will be Samson. Now that I've gotten that fun announcement out of the way, there's another part of this that I kind of wanted to address, and I think this is more just educational and informational. So there are, in genetics, for things like embark, there are certain genetic diseases or genes and markers that we know a whole lot about, and then there are others that are still in the process of being researched. And so the certain conditions where we know a lot about them, the genetic counselors at Embark or at UC Davis will tell you, do not pair these dogs because we know what the outcome will be. There are other genetic genes and markers where we have seen those genes, there was a wasp, I think. We're good. I don't like wasps. So we have seen these genes show up in certain breeds continuously or across multiple breeds, but we've only seen them actually appear in certain breeds. And so the gene might be present across many breeds, but we've only seen a condition associated with it appear in certain breeds. So hopefully that makes sense. But there are a couple of genes that my dogs carry. One is called ALT activity, and the other one is called copper toxitosis, which is ATP7, I believe is 7B. I believe is what it's called. That's the gene name for it. I'll put the information down here in a note if I've said that incorrectly. And so ALT activity and copper toxicosis are genes and genetic markers that are seen in my breeds. However, they are not known to actually cause the disease in my breed. So it is known to cause certain problems in other breeds, but we have no known cases of those genetic conditions appearing in my breeds. And so my dog carries the gene, but we don't see any reason to limit our breeding program based on those gene markers at this time, because we don't see any of our breed actually ending up with those conditions. So just to explain a little bit more, ALT activity has to do with liver enzymes, and the dogs that actually do have ALT activity as an active case generally just have liver enzymes that score higher on their lab work. It generally doesn't affect the dogs negatively. It's just something that owners and veterinarians like to be aware of, because when they run the labs, they can see and expect that those dogs' liver enzymes are gonna be elevated. ALT activity, from all of my research and understanding, I've pulled out my genetic books, I've talked to the Embark genetic counselors, I've talked to the UC Davis's genetic laboratory, their veterinary genetic laboratory. I've talked to fellow breeders, and from everything that I understand, it's just one of those things that it's good to know, but we actually don't see dogs with actual ALT activity in my breeds. There are certain breeds it affects. I believe, I want to say it's Dobermans and Labs, but I'll have to look again and put it in the comments below. It's hard to retain all this information in my head, but we don't see them in our breeds. And because our breeds are rarer, they are less common breeds, this has been something that we have been encouraged not to limit and base our breeding decisions upon, as to not limit our genetic pool. Hey, Joggles, come. Joggles, good boy, come on. He's a good boy, come on. So the other one that I mentioned, copper toxicosis, basically it's called accumulating copper toxicosis. And this gene is, it can basically, if the disease becomes active in the animal, it can actually be something where the body does not process out copper appropriately. It accumulates and they get sick from it. They get poisoning from the extra copper in their body. This is something that is addressed when a dog has copper toxicosis by lowering the copper in their diet. So it's just handled via dietary means, and usually the dogs go on to be just fine. And again, copper toxicosis is not known to affect livestock guardian breeds at all. So I do have dogs that carry ALT activity and copper toxicosis, but because of the fact that we know a little bit about those genes, we know that they don't affect dogs in our breed, the livestock guardian dog breeds, Anatolians, Great Pyrenees, Caucasian Ovsharkas, the Sherplaninock, Spanish Mastiff, Bos Shepherd, all of the breeds that are kind of in my lines. I don't really have a concern about continuing to pair dogs, even if I have a double carrier. And the reason for that is it doesn't really mean anything in my breed. Now, if more research came, it's good to note. It's good to note, and it's good to keep an eye on for the future. It's good to keep an eye on labs in the future, and it's good for my puppy families to be aware of. But as of right now, it is not something that I'm going to be basing breeding decisions on, because I need to make sure that my genetic diversity is sound, and that the more important genetic conditions that we know are going to affect our dogs are managed well. And so that's kind of where things are standing right now. If you guys have any questions for me, please leave a comment down below. And I can't wait to introduce you to our new guy. He'll be here tomorrow, so I will share him as soon as he is here, and kind of share all about him and him getting introduced to the crew here. That will be a process that we take over a few days, but yeah, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.